This week on The Conscious Resistance, we take a look at the efforts to declassify the Senate report on torture, the latest news related to 9/11 as we gear up for the 13th anniversary, whether communities can take care of the environment better than the government can, what it means to be a Boddhisattva, and also some footage from last weekend's Jackalope Freedom Festival in Arizona, and an interview with author Hiram Crespo about his book, Tending to the Epicurean Garden. All this and more tonight on The Conscious Resistance.
Wondering how I got into this mix.
In early 2013, the Senate Intelligence Committee approved a report on the CIA's use of interrogation techniques, or torture. What the report revealed was not much of a surprise to those of us who've been paying attention. The CIA used interrogation, enhanced interrogation, torture techniques to get confessions, some possibly false or coerced confessions related to terrorism, specifically 9/11. Now, these tactics have increased since the attacks of 9/11, but looking back on the CIA's history, these are really not much of a new tactic for the CIA. As the Senate committee started doing their investigation on torture, they found out that their emails and their computers were inappropriately and probably unconstitutionally accessed by the CIA wanting to keep an eye on which reports the senators had access to. They violated separation of government between the federal government, having to worry about being under investigation from federal agencies such as the CIA and the FBI. Of course, the CIA does whatever the hell it wants. And this report is still classified as we speak, should be declassified in the coming weeks. What we know about it, besides the extensive use of waterboarding, is that it's likely going to indicate that CIA Director John Brennan, who is also a good friend of President Obama, and was the investigation of former journalist, now deceased journalist Michael Hastings' investigation into the CIA's use of torture. We know that he headed up this operation, and some call him the architect of this torture, similarly to the way Dick Cheney operated during George Bush's presidency. Earlier this month, the public was supposed to have access to a 480-page report on the CIA's report. However, Senator Dianne Feinstein has been fighting the release of it until further notice. Now, expect to see them drag their feet all the way to the finishing line. If indeed we ever do see this report, it'll probably be heavily redacted, or they're going to release some version to the public that they say, doesn't endanger national security. And of course, the government have been using the idea of national security, threats to national safety for probably since the beginning of nation states in general, I would guess. But I know the United States has been since I've been around, so at least 20 or 30 years, we've been being lied to, have information held in the dark because of the interest of national security, national safety. You've seen the pictures that have been released from Iraq, and who knows what they're doing in Guantanamo. We know about the force feeding, but who knows what else they're doing behind closed doors that they haven't allowed out there. I mean, it's really disturbing to think and to imagine the things that have been done in the name of freedom, funded by all of us who still are in the tax game. So find a way to opt out, spread information about this, and look out for the report. You can find more about this as soon as it comes out. We'll be reporting on it here at The Conscious Resistance. Director Brennan has apologized to the Senate for allowing the CIA to go into senators' computers and emails and to snoop around and find out what information they had access to. And we even actually got an acknowledgement from President Obama saying that we did torture some folks.
But we tortured some folks. And when we engaged in some of these enhanced interrogation techniques that I believe, and I think any fair-minded person would believe, were torture, we crossed the line.
So the president admits that we've been torturing people. The report that is still being heavily redacted and kept from public eye is going to indicate that the American public was lied to about the use of torture, what kind of torture was going on, who exactly, and hopefully this will create a new sense of understanding for the average American and realize, well, my tax dollars, my support of this empire, the United States empire, and our chasing terror around the world is actually leading to the abuse and cruel and unusual punishment of human beings. It doesn't matter whether they're American or not. And I would argue that doesn't matter whether or not they've committed actual acts of terrorism, which usually are just them defending their homeland from us coming in and trying to subject them to our rule. I would argue even those people deserve fair treatment. That's what the idea of the United States, if you still believe in the United States, you still believe in the Constitution, any of those ideas, that's what it's supposed to be founded on, that all people deserve protection, not just Americans. So hopefully when this report sees the light of day, it'll wake up some new minds and we can spread that information and begin the process of healing these atrocious things. Look out for more information on this report as it comes out here on the Conscious Resistance. So one of the arguments I typically hear regarding libertarian society or anarchist society, voluntary society, is how would the environment be handled? And I think these are legitimate concerns. I myself have wondered for a while and tried to come up with solutions that don't involve using the force of the state or the government, and to still have respect and an understanding of the importance of nature and the planet and the animals around us without forcing those ideas on someone. And typically people say that the opponents of libertarianism and libertarian ideas would say that in a libertarian society, corporations are going to rise to power and you wouldn't be able to protect your land. There would be no reason to stop them from dumping oil on your land whenever they want, and toxic chemicals and things like that. However, what we've argued is that there would be no incentive for the corporations and for the governments to do these state institutions, whatever they would be, without an overarching state. There would be no incentive for them to do this because, for one, the people would have more power. You wouldn't have to fight with the government in order to say, hey, we don't want these people dumping in our backyard. In Houston, there's a community of Manchester that is, you go from one side of Houston to Manchester, you can notice the pollution in the air and the sky. There's also extreme rates of cancer in that particular area. And these are all due to things that are happening coming from Exxon and from pipelines and things like that, that my guess would be that if the communities had more control of that, they wouldn't allow those things to take place in their environment. They wouldn't be forced to by their local governments or state governments or federal governments. A new report from the World Resources Institute and the Rights and Resources Initiative took a look at over 130 studies from 14 different countries and found that in most cases, communities can actually take care of the environment better than the governments can. The report looks at several communities in the Brazilian Amazon, in Guyana in South America, and also communities in Indonesia, and found that when communities were in control of their environments, deforestation efforts were actually slowed down compared to when the government is in control. Now, as far as my personal beliefs of shamanism and indigenous teachings and the importance of that in an awakening and coming back to being partner with the earth instead of trying to dominate the earth, this completely makes sense. When you have a sense of being connected to your community, those around you, and you're also dependent on the environment, you're not detached from it like many of us are in the Western world, then you have a reason to be a part of it, to save it, and to stop it. And the study in the report, they quote some of the community members and say that the Western mind sees our forest as money, but we see it as our livelihood. And they have pharmacies out there where they're connected to the plants and making medicines, and they're making hallucinogenic concoctions. They also have gardens and all kinds of ways that these people are in touch and in tune with the community, with the earth, with their forest, and with the planet, and would much rather save it than see it go to waste or be deforested to build new hydroelectric dams or gold mines or whatever resources are plentiful in the area. Rest assured, some multinational, transnational companies are coming for them, all because they think that the savages don't know how to take care of their land. And to me, this study, and we'll go ahead and post the link below the video so you can look further on your own, but this study and others like it confirm that people given the power of ruling over themselves, first of all, and then ruling over their own mind, and then coming together with other like-minded individuals who have also decided that they want to have self-governance and not governance from external forces, they can do positive things. We don't need the government to save the environment. We don't need the government to save ourselves. And we definitely don't need the government to tell us what's right and what's wrong. So just remember that when someone tells you that without the government, the environment would go to shit and society would fall apart. Recently, we caught up with author and founder of the Society of Friends of Epicurus, Hiram Crespo. We were talking to him about his new book, Tending to the Epicurean Garden. Hiram been messaging me for weeks, suggesting that I check out this philosophy of Epicurus, and he told me that it would relate to libertarian, anarchist philosophy, and that I might find some interesting correlations there in my pursuit of spreading the ideas of spirituality, philosophy, and anarchy. So we decided to catch up with him and talk a little bit about his book. Here's a clip of the interview. If you want to see the full interview, click on the link below. Okay, in this article you wrote recently for Occupy.com, you discuss another aspect, and in the book you mention autarky. Now I wanted to talk about that a little bit. First of all, define that for us, and then let's discuss how it's distinguished from anarchy.
From what I know of anarchy, anarchy basically just means that there's nobody in power, that there's no government. Epicureanism is apolitical. And I think part of the reason why we're apolitical is because Epicurus lived in the times after Alexander the Great, where after he died, the Greek kingdom became divided into 4 states, and there was a lot of intrigue and a lot of backstabbing, a lot of people killing each other, and politics was fairly dirty, and I guess it is also today. So politics in those days was associated with that culture and with the temptation of power and all of that. And also I think that philosophy, by its nature, it requires that you look at society from the outside, and that you sort of, when you're immersed in the power in the police, the city-state, and in the power and sort of in the running of the city, what that does is that you're immersed in it and you can't really see it from the outside, and you don't have a perspective where you can see things from the outside and be critical of it and name things by their name. So the Epicureans, they built their garden, their philosophical school, just outside of Athens, and they were sort of on the limits of society. They weren't really philosophers of the city per se, like the Stoics or the followers of Plato. They were very useful to the ruling classes. But Epicureanism is really a philosophy of the people, and it's very horizontal in the way that we treat each other. They embraced women, they embraced slaves. Everyone was welcome in the garden to engage in philosophical discourse. So it's a very populist movement. It's very horizontal, and the idea of autarky is basically just self-sufficiency at the individual level and also at the level of cooperative ventures. And the garden actually itself was a business venture. The garden wasn't just a place of beauty and pleasure and meditation. It was also, they actually grew their own food. And it was actually literally a garden where they grew their own food. And they also had a publishing venture where they replicated scrolls, and they tutored people in philosophy, and they gained money from the fees. So they actually lived out the principle of autarky in the garden, where it was sort of a publishing venture as well as the philosophical sort of meditation, maybe a monastery of some sort. So autarky just means self-sufficiency. That's all it means. We believe that self-sufficiency is important because if you're not self-sufficient, you will either have to rely on other people and then develop relations based usually on domination, where you're not really a free person in order to procure your basic needs. Or on the other hand, you may have to exploit others or pillage or steal from others, and then there's violence if you're not self-sufficient. So self-sufficiency creates sort of the habitat that is needed for a society to not be dysfunctional, basically.
Yeah, I really enjoy that, and I think that the audience that is more on the apolitical, voluntarist, agorist, and even some libertarian side would agree or appreciate the idea of autarky and Epicurean philosophy in general being apolitical and promoting self-sufficiency. I 100% agree that mode of thinking of needing to be dependent on others or having to exploit or do violent acts in order to survive, it does breed other problems, so it's important to be self-sufficient. I think there's no argument there. We're exactly 1 month away from the 13th anniversary of the September 11th attacks in 2001. And I've been talking about this for months, building up. I do this every year as we lead towards the anniversary, trying to come up with plans to organize action in New York City and also encourage other people to take their own action around the country and really around the world. I know there are plans for actions in Denmark, Germany, England, across the United States, and we will be definitely in New York City from September 11th to September 13th, doing some street action, doing some documentary screenings, some speakers, and we'll get into all that in a moment. But what I want to talk about now is why 9/11 is relevant without even getting into too much conspiracy realm. Now, when I say conspiracy, I don't say it in the disparaging way that many people in the media try to use to attack those of us who understand that conspiracies happen all the time, that people come together and conspire to do things. This can range from conspiring to throw a secret surprise birthday party or conspiring to fix a market to make billions and billions of dollars. Also, it could be conspiring together to organize terrorist attacks, funding them from the background. Now, what I'm talking about specifically is the funding of the September 11th attacks. 13 years later, despite the 9/11 Commission report and the mainstream old stream media parroting the idea that we've got all the answers, there's still quite a bit that is unknown to the public. And this includes a 28-page report that is currently classified that is inching towards being released to the public. There is a bipartisan effort, Republicans and Democrats coming together, who want to see this report released. This 28-page report is only one part of a bigger 400-page report that reveals with many aspects of 9/11, and the 28 pages deal with funding from foreign governments. Now, several representatives who've seen this and senators have said that this would cause Americans to have frustration and anger and to rethink all the things they know about 9/11. There's even Representative Walter Jones, who continuously is making calls for the release of these files, saying that it points to Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabian royalty and Saudi government connections. For those of you who have done the research over the past 13 years and looked into this shouldn't be much of a surprise. There's some great documentaries out there. Fabled Enemies is one of them by Jason Burmis that takes a look at some of the connections between the Bush family, the Bin Laden family, and even further than that, looking at Saudi royalty and their connection to some of the hijackers, funding the hijackers, all sorts of Saudi citizens being flown out of the United States when all planes and flights were grounded in the days after 9/11. So there's tons of information there. And what the old stream tells you is that we've got the official report. It's only these 19 hijackers. There was no foreign states involved. So kill these guys, go after Muslims, go after Arabs, find Al-Qaeda, and everything will be better. But what would happen if this report and other evidence points to the fact that the United States ally, Saudi Arabia, and some people go further and say that there is evidence of Israeli involvement? What would happen if it was revealed through declassified documents that the entire war on terror is a lie? I mean, most of us already assume this and know this. We feel this in our gut, and we know that we were lied to about the Iraq war. We know that we've been lied to about plenty of things. But what would it mean for the reality of the average American's life if all of a sudden they found out that somebody that we've been trading oil with and goods with and have had a pact with since World War II to protect them in the name of oil, Saudi Arabia, if we found out that their government or agents of their government or royalty in their government were funding these attacks through certain individuals that were then funding the hijackers. So of course they're going to keep themselves at a distance. They're not going to get their hands, too dirty on it, and they're going to deny all involvement, which is what the Saudi government has continued to do. But there is a strong effort that is pushing out there. I do encourage you to look into this report. I will post a couple of different articles that talk about this. I think it's imperative that information gets released, and most likely it's not going to be any smoking gun that some of us are hoping for. It's going to be 28 pages of redacted information. There will be some new things. It might cause a stir, but we can, each step is one step closer to revealing the truth. On another 9/11 front, it's been revealed by the New York Post and several other publications that in the past year, the cancer rates of 9/11 first responders, firefighters, and others who went into the wreckage to help people have seen cancer rates double. And if you kept up with this situation as well, if you've ever heard of the Feel Good Foundation, please check them out if you haven't. They focus specifically on helping first responders who've been denied help by the government. And that's just another very sad and traumatic aspect of 9/11 is whoever did these attacks, let's just say that we're all speculating about nothing and the government's theory is correct, as implausible as it is, and it happened the way they said. Fine. These people chose to go in there to help other Americans to do what they could to find dead bodies and to pull out live people that were still there and have received no help. They've gotten sick, had all sorts of World Trade Center illnesses from breathing in the dust of the buildings, the computers, the desks, the human bodies, everything that was, essentially vaporized and crushed into dust. You saw the clouds after 9/11. They breathed that stuff in for days and for weeks, and they were told and lied to by the EPA that everything was safe and there was nothing to worry about. So please continue to support these people however you can, and hopefully they will see some justice. One more aspect of 9/11. Besides the classified reports, besides the attacks on the first responders, there's also been an amazing effort by the group known as New York City for Accountability Now, NYCAN, who's pushing for the high-rise safety initiative, which, if passed, would force the New York City Council and the New York City local government to investigate the collapse of all high-rise buildings that happened on or after September 11, 2001. So obviously this would include World Trade Center Building 7. So since March, the group has been gathering thousands and thousands of signatures. They've been rallying efforts. They gathered over 100,000 signatures recently. They submitted them to City Council a month ahead of time, and they said they were prepared to do whatever it took to get them there. because Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York and other city council members have already said on record that they were going to do what they could to stop these conspiracy theorists from getting their resolution in the council and voted on. He's already said, you know, straight up, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to do whatever I can. And I think the city council feels the same way. So sure enough, the activists, the family members, and the concerned individuals behind this effort submitted their signatures. And just 2 days ago, the New York Post again reported that a speaker from the city council said that we're not going to waste taxpayer dollars to humor some conspiracy theories. We're going to focus on real issues. The group, for its part, has said that they are prepared to take this battle to court if they need to make sure that it is on the ballot. So whatever you can, however you can, if you're in New York City or wherever you are, if you've got a couple of extra bucks to lend to that effort, please do. And if anything, just share the article, share the information, share this video. So please keep up your efforts and come to New York City if you can. Organize local efforts where you can. Check out ground0911.com for the full information on what we're going to be doing this year. But if you're available, come to New York on 9/11, 9/12, and 9/13, and you will meet other people who are searching for truth and maybe get inspired to continue to do the same. For the third year, activists, voluntarists, agorists, anarchists, curious people came to Black Canyon Lake, Arizona for the Jackalope Freedom Festival, otherwise known as Jack Fest. Now, this was my first time at the event. It was a great time. I got to meet new people, hang out with other people who I've worked with online through Facebook and internet activism. I got to support independent businesses, buy some fresh soap, support individuals selling their raised livestock that they've raised on their own. I got to have some homegrown watermelon and trade for some seeds. Lots of interesting ideas were there. I spoke a little bit at Jackalope Fest. We'll get that video out soon whenever it comes out. But for now, take a look at what the festival was like for us there. For the last 3 years, activists, agorists, voluntarists, and anarchists have been gathering in the Black Canyon Lake, Arizona for the Jackalope Freedom Festival. At Jackalope, people gather together to spontaneously create order, abiding by the non-aggression principle, living allowing each individual to do what they want as long as they hurt no one else. People talk about sustainability, learning skills, selling your own crafts, and doing so all without taxes and without being regulated by the government. There were quail being raised and rabbit being raised and sold as tacos. Another aspect of Jackalope was that most of the people selling goods, crafts, food, all accepted silver, gold, and Bitcoin. It was really great to be able to see individuals being free, open carrying weapons, discussing sustainability, cooking their own food that they killed with their bare hands, selling products that they created with their own hands, little kids running around, being free, all in this beautiful forest. I think Jackalope is going to continue to grow just like Porkfest and other freedom-based festivals, and I know that as these ideas spread and more people come to them, we should expect to see these events continue to spread around the country. I plan to be at Jackalope in 2015. I want to talk for a moment about the ideas of what it means to be a Bodhisattva or a Bodhisattva. I was first introduced to this idea in 2005-2006 when I started to get into meditation and Zen Buddhism and started studying Buddhism in general, looking at the Theravada schools and Mahayana schools. So in the Mahayana school, the idea of a Bodhisattva is somebody who chooses to sort of put off their own enlightenment in order to save all sentient beings. Not as they're a savior or they're the one or anything like that, but basically the idea that each of us decides at some point, I'm going to choose a more enlightened path, I'm going to have compassion, and I'm going to pursue this path. And so we start to take those steps. And somewhere along the way, certain individuals decide, you know what, I want to devote my life to helping everyone find this answer before I choose to just go on to my own bliss. I wanted to explore this concept as it relates to activism and the modern Western world, because I feel as an activist, one of the reasons I haven't gone off to the land and gone to live in some sustainable community or an intentional community and just said, screw the rest of y'all, is because I care and I want other people to care. I feel like if we all just choose to act, some would argue selfishly, and save ourselves and go away, for one, the problems aren't going to go away. You will definitely you may achieve a relaxed, I wouldn't say enlightened state of mind, but in the end, you're ultimately just ignoring the problems by trying to run away from things. And I feel like as activists, we can choose to say, I want to find the most freedom that fits my life, my mind. I want to start in my mind and start in my heart and make myself as free as possible. And after that, I feel like some of us, myself included, come to the conclusion that what good is freedom if we're doing it alone? I've more and more been reminded that my idea of freedom and what my ideal society could look like, or even just a better way forward, it includes other people. More and more I understand that until we're all free, then I don't think any of us are free, And the idea of Bodhisattva has sat with me like that for quite a bit, where I felt like if I'm going to pursue spiritual enlightenment, political enlightenment, activism, meditation, all these different things, I want to spread these great ideas. And obviously not everyone's going to come to them the same way I will. We all come to the answers in different ways, but I think it's important for us as a human community to decide that, hey, we're all going to be bodhisattvas. Let's just decide that we're going to enlighten ourselves, awaken our own minds, and find those around us who resonate with similar messages that brought us to this information and choose to help spread it around and keep going and keep going. And as I said earlier, the matrix is composed of all of us. We can step out, we can find tunnels and ways to the real world and ways to live a more real, natural existence outside of the influence of the state. But ultimately, how can you do that knowing that your brothers and sisters are still suffering in darkness and in pain, whether that means that they're still subjected to this false ideal that government is the best way to live, or they're stuck in a place where they lack a sense of spirituality or understanding of self, a philosophical sense, what some people would refer to as zombies or sheeple. I don't like to use those words, but whatever you want to say, there are brothers and sisters of ours out there who need help. That doesn't mean that we are good and they are bad, or we're the authorities and they're not. It's not about putting things into that dualistic context. I believe that ultimately all individuals will choose to find a more enlightened path. It may look different from one person to the next, but I do believe that all people come to a point in time where their beliefs, their very idea of what reality is and how they're going to move forward is challenged. And we can decide to stay in a mode of cognitive dissonance, or we can choose to say, you know what, I'm going to have compassion, not only for myself, because I have to start with myself, I have to start as local as I can get, and that is myself, but also having compassion for those around me. So bodhisattvas take vows, basically saying that that's what they're going to choose to do. And there's variations depending on if you're looking at Mahayana Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism, but they all tend towards that idea that bodhisattvas are somebody that decide while there's samsara, which is the cycle of life and death and suffering, that as long as that exists, they're going to continue to dedicate their lives to helping as many other people as possible. So hopefully you guys will look further into this topic, and we might end up creating more bodhisattvas in this world today. So that's it for this week. Lots of things happening in the world, and I really hope that the information that we're presenting to you is both educating you, informing you, getting you to think, and maybe inspiring you to seek other people in your community to find solutions for you to work on. Because I don't want to just do this show every week and bring you doom and gloom news or sit here and act as if I'm authority on these topics. I choose to do this weekly show. We choose to do the Conscious Resistance Network because we believe that there are plenty of other good people out there who maybe have a gut feeling or something coming from their heart and their mind that tells them that this matrix that we live in is not the best that we can do and is not even what's meant for us. So we're working to make it easier to help our other brothers and sisters to find a way, to find a ladder or a rope, to pull themselves out of the matrix and to seek their own version of happiness, their own version of freedom. Please be sure to follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Every week we like to highlight independent musicians, artists, bands, people who are doing their job promoting art and culture through music. I've said time and time again that I don't believe there'll be a realistic, positive, successful evolution, revolution without music and without culture. And this isn't just about waking up to political awareness. This is about trying to create a culture where each person is valued for who they are and what they do, and everyone's respected, and we abide by non-aggression and choosing to live by these freedom principles. Music plays a big part in that for me. How many of you have had an experience where music has completely changed your mood and your perception, took you from one place to the exact opposite, whether positive or negative? We all understand the power of music, and we want to support those who are dedicating their lives to spreading good ideas and good vibrations through music. So if you have music to contribute, please go to the website, check out our music tab, and send us some samples of your music, or if you know other artists we should promote, please do. We'll be back next week with footage from the Contact in the Desert conference that we're attending in Joshua Tree, California. So look out for that. As always, if you can hear this, you are the resistance. Peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, the last president of the United States of America.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day.
Everything we want is sitting right in our midst, but we don't really give a fuck, that's the twist. Once you fall into the trap, it's abyss. Somebody took a bullet for your right to exist. When they slide that by you, they give you a rifle, your G.I. Joe. Hold on to your Bible, it's about survival. That is what it's read my flow. Everything is gonna be my way. See, I do not play with the CIA. In the dirt is where they must lay. You see, them motherfuckers murdered JFK. But that was also an outside job, just like 9/11 done by the Mossad. No doubt about it. Anybody who had a voice, Martin, Robert, Malcolm, name your choice. I'm on some wild shit this year. You bet your gums I'm in here. It ain't no fun to this dear. I ain't the one to miss here. I'm on some wild shit this year. You bet your gums I'm in here. It ain't no fun to this dear. I ain't the one to miss him. They've infiltrated your patriot radio stations. Bee collectors are busy gathering information. This is no way to conduct a patriot meeting. Council for National Policy is where they're eating. Yummy. AJ gets no respect. Pretty soon he will host the show with Glenn Beck. How much rat poison is in the tuna fish? When will they turn him into a lunatic? These are questions that I ask myself as I sit back and ponder how vast the wealth. The die's been cast, at last you pass the help. If you think that I'm lying, you should blast yourself. Ted Pike is a friend of mine. Mr. Jones booked him and then declined because he did not want to debate the fact that Israel is a rabbit little state. They call me anti-Semitic, picture that. If that's true, I'm a Nigerian diplomat. The same old guest, he brings on the chit and chat. They sound like pussy, I got a verbal dick for that. Mr. Jones, let me get this right. Jack Blood got bitched out by your wife because he wasn't pushing your material right. I trust Jack Blood with my motherfucking life. Yeah. My balls are all out this year. It ain't no fun to this dear. If you don't trust in this here, you might as well slit your wrist here. My balls are all out this year. Believe I weighed the risk here. When patriots get rich here, you may be on the list here.
That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, for I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy, for it is no longer far away and foreign, but close at hand and local.
Blah, 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 blah.
You know, it's like every single step of the way, I'm looking how to make it bigger, better, different. That's my whole philosophy in this. How can I make this bigger, better, and different? I want them to come and experience. This is not about sitting in a chair and listening to someone talk.